Okay, and we are live. Let me go back over to the Discord. Okay, yeah, and he is here. Spazador, can you say something?
Where have I gone? Where am I?
Yeah, I know. We all have those days. So let me put on some background music real quick.
Huh? Um,
So, Spaz,
I'm
how are you doing tonight?
a little sleepy. Little sleepy. Long work week. Finally on vacation for the first time in 7 years. So
Yeah. Well,
I'm
no,
so excited.
yeah, no worries. So tonight, we're going to be doing another retrospective, and crossing my fingers, this one goes better than the last retrospective I did. RoboCop. Um, so
I
tonight,
love RoboCop.
no, yeah, I love it too. Just last time I tried to do a retrospective on it, didn't quite work out as intended.
What happened?
Hang on, let me actually turn the music down a little bit. It's kind of loud. Basically, I tried to do a retrospective on the RoboCop franchise with Black Brains. Shout out to him, by the way. Check out his podcast. But I kind of fucked up on my end, and you couldn't hear him the entire time.
Ah, damn.
And on top of that, like, people started sending in donations, which, thank you, by the way, I greatly appreciate it. But people started sending in like racial slurs, and I was trying
Oh.
really hard to read them, but like in a way that wouldn't get me booted off of YouTube. So I'm really hoping that doesn't happen again.
I'm gonna turn the music down just a tad
Oh,
bit more.
yeah, sure. Hang on. Let's see. Oh, okay. How's that?
Hang on, there's a considerable lag.
Yeah.
Test 1 2 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, your audio's coming in just fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we should be good. I was just listen to the audio balancing.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so anyway, tonight we're gonna be talking about one of personally what's my all-time favorite horror film, 1981's The Evil Dead, and the franchise as a whole. Um, I guess to get things started, Spaz, when was the first time you saw The Evil Dead, and what did you think?
Okay, so the first time I remember seeing Evil Dead, I had to have been like no older than maybe 8 or 9 at the time. I found it in an old VHS,
The
and
glory days.
I had watched it in the den, and I didn't know what to make of it. because I couldn't get the lighting of the TV just right, but it was definitely something. And then kept going through the VHSs. Actually, I believe on my shelf I actually have the Evil Dead somewhere in this house. The exact yeah, on my shelf I have the first one, second one, and Army of Darkness on VHS right there on my shelf. Holy shit,
Oh,
the very same ones.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I we had those in a random box somebody gave to us, and I watched the first one. Was like freak the hell out, and
Yeah.
then went on from there.
Yeah. So I can't remember exactly the first time I saw it, but I remember because growing up, I was never a really big horror fan. I was a bit of a pussy and still kind of am. But I want to say around like when I was in high school, for whatever reason, I started getting an interest in horror. And I think the first movie that I saw that kind of got me interested in horror was A Nightmare on Elm Street, and that kind of intrigued me. I was like, oh, okay, this horror stuff is actually kind of interesting. I can get behind it. And then I don't know why, but I remember I think it was around 2005. I saw a thing on TV about the Evil Dead musical, and they were showing clips from the movie, and I was like, what is this movie? So I looked into it and learned it was a movie called The Evil Dead. I rented it, I think, from either Blockbuster or Hollywood Video, one of the two on DVD. And I watched it, and I was just blown away by it. Like I had never seen anything like it before, and I was instantly hooked. I was like, I gotta know more about this movie and just this genre as a whole.
I hear you.
Yeah,
Like, it's definitely a rabbit hole. Like it, watching the the first two, and then going into Army of Darkness is definitely like it's an adventure because you get to see Ash evolve.
yeah,
It's more along the lines of a concept of like going mad from traumatic events
yeah.
to the point to where you eventually become sane again, to where the things that as you fight can no longer affect you that way.
No, yeah, I totally get that. I guess to go into some production history on the film. So the movie was made by a group of friends from Detroit, Michigan, namely Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, Josh Becker, and Scott Spiegel. They all shot a bunch of like Super 8 films back in the day. And when Raimi went to college, he met a guy named Robert Tappert, who also had a love of movies, and they started working together. And Raimi got the initial idea for what became The Evil Dead when learning about the Book of the Dead in an ancient history class. So he and his friends decided to pull some money together, and they shot a film called The Happy Go Lucky Kid that they played at their college's auditorium, and it was a big hit. So they decided to drop out of college and pursue filmmaking. So they made a short film called Within the Woods that was basically kind of a precursor to The Evil Dead in order to drum up investors and get interest in it. And through showings of it, they managed to acquire about $350,000. Well, it was from that and also from a group of dentists, which you'd be surprised how many times low budget films are financed by dentists. But yeah, they pulled this money together, and they actually planned on shooting in Tennessee the entire time because they were going to be filming in like late 1979, I believe, and Detroit was known for having like really cold winters, but in Tennessee it was always like humid. But when they got there, Tennessee was experiencing one of the coldest winters they ever had on record. Meanwhile, back in Detroit, it was unseasonably warm.
It sounds par for the course for any sort of production of like of this magnitude. Star says they have never seen The Evil Dead. There has never been a better time to get into it. I mean, they have a sequel coming up, Evil Dead Rise, this year.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
It's not directly attached per se, but it still adds the mythos to it all.
Yeah. I guess some other production notes. The cabin that they filmed in was completely abandoned when they found it, and it was coated in layers upon layers of cow shit, and they had to like spend like however much time like cleaning it all up. They were given free reign to do whatever they wanted to with the cabin. Like they ripped out the roofing so they could fit in their lighting rigs. They put in like they cut out holes for windows. They dug like basically 6 foot trench for the basement. They just had free reign over the cabin. And I think at one point during filming, they lost the lease on like the house they were staying at, so they had to move it into the cabin, which had no running water and no electricity.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Hey, at least it didn't end up like the production of a poltergeist, where like, oh yeah, these aren't like prop cadavers.
yeah, no, these are real skeletons. Um,
These are not only real skeletons. This movie literally does not want to be made. We made 3 sequels.
yeah. Bodacious says power washing must have been fun. Yeah, there's actually funny thing about that. So for the movie, for the fake blood, they used the classic combination of Caro syrup and dye, but because of how cold it was while they were filming, the blood would actually freeze and it would like stick to the actors, like it would stick to their clothes. Um, I remember hearing a story from Bruce Campbell, who plays Ash in all 3 of the original films, of a story where one time it was on the last day of filming and he was just covered head to toe in the fake blood, and they were driving back to a hotel they were staying at in a pickup truck. He had to sit in the truck bed because he was, really sticky, and it was on a Sunday. And at one point they pulled up to a stoplight and they were right next to a church, and all the people were leaving the church. So you can imagine their reaction seeing a truck with a guy in the back who looks like he's covered in blood.
Uh,
Yeah, but the worst part of it is when they got to the hotel, Bruce Campbell got in the shower with his clothes still on, because if he tried to take them off, then because of the blood, it would like start to peel some hair and even a little bit of skin.
of course. I mean, like, okay, so that answers my question. You're like, why didn't you just, like, bring a change of clothes? Like, oh, because we ripping everything off. It was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've done a little bit of like special effects work with the Caro syrup and whatnot.
Hmm.
Minor bullshit for like squib practice
Yeah.
for things that never manifested to a full on use. And yeah, I know how it can be like getting that shit over everywhere.
Yeah. Star saying, "I'm surprised no one got frostbite." Yeah, that is true. Because like one of the actresses in the movie, Ellen Sandweiss, she had to run through the woods with nothing on but like a little nightie. Like she had no stunt pads or anything. Like there's actually like outtake footage where she's running through the woods and she's like getting cuts and scrapes from like all the trees and the twigs just like scattered everywhere.
And don't forget that one part with the tree that's follows that part just
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah.
Well, what's funny is apparently she actually didn't know about that one shot. Like she knew of course about like the vines like wrapping around her limbs like and falling like throwing her to the ground. But then that one shot of the that goes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Apparently she had no idea that was going to happen, and when she went to the premiere, she was like shocked when she saw that. She just couldn't believe it.
Like, it was like, how could they do that? And I was like, well, if it wasn't clear these things are like, evil as they are, it's, these are like, these are entities beyond all understanding being brought over to a place that we don't know anything about
Yeah.
into our reality.
Yeah. Um, I guess also I should probably mention what the plot of the movie is for those of you who don't know. The basic idea is that it's about 5 college students. Let's see, there's Ash, his sister Cheryl, his girlfriend Linda, his friend Scotty, and his friend's girlfriend Shelly. They go to a cabin in the middle of the woods, and while there, they find a bunch of weird stuff in the basement, including a tape recorder, an ancient book, a dagger, and a shotgun, and some shells. And they play the tape recording, and it's from this guy named Professor Nobi, who found the book called the Naturam de Monta, which in later movies was called the Necronomicon. And by playing the tape recording, they release these like ancient demons that come out, and they possess each of the people in the cabin. And the only way to stop the demons is to kill them by bodily dismemberment. And it's basically just who survives and who can live throughout the night.
I think you may have butchered the pronunciation of the Book of the Dead.
Yeah.
Um, but I've been saying it like all the time.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I remember in the first movie, I'm pretty sure they say it's like Natorum de Monta or something like that.
it's a I actually if I re, the the Necronomicon Deus Muertos.
Yeah. Well, it.
It's
Oh,
it's spoken like very close to Latin,
okay. Well, I also.
but
Well, I remember in the later movies they refer to it as the Necronomicon Ex Mortis.
yeah, Ex Mortis.
Yeah.
The book itself, well, actually, like for, and this is way off the retrospective, but it's like for a lore thing. There's actually three of them written. They were written at three different times by three different hands, but they were written during the same age when the seas ran red with blood. Written in ancient Sumerian,
Yeah.
and were across the plains of the desert
Yeah.
in Sumeria. Back like probably just before the Hebrews left Egypt, if I think correctly for the ages. Anyways, somehow through years of being used, they stopped working altogether
Mm-hmm.
and found their way all the way to like the United Kingdom or like Scotland back in freaking medieval times. And
I
that's
see.
when like it started to like become more potent again
I gotcha.
and were sought after.
Yeah. I guess to go over some more production notes about the movie. So in the movie, whenever somebody becomes possessed, as you can see in the picture in the background, their eyes go white. The way they did this was they used, I believe they're called sclera lenses. They're basically these like contact lenses. They're like big hunks of glass that you don't like put in your eye like a normal contact lens. You have to like use a special applicator to basically like punch them in, and they cut off all circulation to your eye, and basically you're blind when you wear them. And when they got the lenses, they were told to only wear them a few times a day for about 15 minutes at a time, which they ignored and had the actress wear for much longer than they should have. And for the actress featured on this picture, Ellen Sandweiss, who played Cheryl, she actually hated wearing the contacts so much that at one point she refused to wear them. So instead, they made a mask for her that had the lenses like built in.
That's the proper way to do things.
Mm-hmm. And another one term the actors came up with while working on the film was the latex point. Basically, it was a point at where they were covered in like makeup and had like all kinds of like blood and shit on them that it got to the point to where they just like lost their shit and wanted out, which happened quite a bit.
Yeah. Fucking. Sorry, I spaced out for just for a moment, but
No, you're fine.
like the connection that the Necronomicon, I keep going back to this, has with like other media
Mm-hmm.
is based around H.P. Lovecraft's story that centers around the idea of the Book of the Dead.
Okay.
That goes like really deep into like the Egyptian ideas
Mm-hmm.
around ancient Sumeria.
Yeah.
But the dagger also comes into play, being is that it was crafted by one of the Dark Ones that had written one of the Books of the Dead in order to get over on one of the other ones.
Yeah.
And
And
it's the only thing that can it's the only thing that can like expel these creatures, more or less.
Yeah. Real quick, in the chat, started speculation said, "Sounds like too much work. I would have quit. I'm a quitter." It's funny that you mentioned that because while they were filming, at a certain point, a lot of the actors and crew actually left, mostly because they had other projects to work on. So they didn't necessarily quit, but there was a mass exodus, and by the time they finished filming, there were only like 5 people left on the set working on it. There was Sam Raimi, Rob Tapper, Bruce Campbell, David Goodman, and one other guy. And there was actually what they did was like for the people whenever they needed somebody to play one of the demons, they got an extra, but they referred to them as like fake Shemps, which is a Three Stooges reference. Which Sam Raimi is a huge Three Stooges fan. Like, in fact, there's a scene in The Evil Dead where Ash goes into the cellar, and all of a sudden, like, blood starts dripping out of the walls, and it fills up a light bulb. That's directly taken from a Three Stooges short called "A Plumbing We Will Go."
Plumbing We Will Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Bodacious Cino says in chat that it sounds like a still ball run plot point. It's like, well, I could definitely see that. The only problem is that the time that Still Ball Run would take place, I don't think any of the copies of Necronomicon made their way to America.
Mm. Okay, I had to real quick. I had to look up what Steel Ball Run is because I don't know what that is, and it's a JoJo reference.
But yeah, it's this the next part of JoJo to be animated. It's a cross country horse race that is actually a ploy to find the old corpse parts of Jesus Christ.
All right.
Because the main bad guy wants to make America great again.
Okay. Sounds interesting.
Like that's not even an exaggeration. That is like word for word.
Oh wow. Yeah. So I guess getting back on topic a little bit. What are some moments from The Evil Dead that really stick out in your mind? Like that, even if you hadn't seen the movie in years, like if you were to picture the movie, what are moments that like stand out to you?
There are two moments in particular that always stick out to me. It's the ending part of the decimation of the Necronomicon.
Oh yeah.
From the first one, when he finally kills this thing in the fire, they do stop motion animation to watch this thing come alive as it burns.
Yeah.
And the demons fly out of their like out of their hosts.
Yeah.
And there's just like green crap and cream corn flying everywhere, and it's off the. It was like one of the most off the wall things I had seen at the time of my young age, and it's just like, wow. I guarantee you that guy's fucked up, and then that actually correlates to the other part in the second one, when Ash is trying to regain his sanity. He looks up in the mirror, and he's like, "Everything's good." It's like everything's okay, and his reflection grabs him and says, "We just cut our girlfriend up with a chainsaw. Does that sound okay to you?"
Yeah, that's a great scene. For me, like with the first movie, there are a lot of moments I can think of. The one that always stuck out to me was when Shelly gets possessed and she's attacking Scotty with the dagger, and then Scotty looks back. He grabs a hunting knife that he's got in him. He holds it up to her wrist and like cuts it halfway through, and then she tosses him aside. And then she like gnaws her own hand off. Like that part just, oh god! Every time I see that, I feel like I'm gonna throw up because not only is the act itself disgusting, but like she makes these like chewing noises, like like god, it always like terrifies me every time I see it.
I believe it.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I cannot get my wife to sit down and like watch movies with me because she's not really big into horror movies or anything excessively gory.
Yeah.
And with this little bit of like movie, it can be a chore to watch if that's not your forte.
Yeah. No, I get that. And actually, really quick, because Boda's been talking in the chat, I forgot to mention he actually donated a couple minutes ago for $3.50. He said Loch Ness Monster Spy Balloon would be interesting. I don't know what that is, but I can certainly look into it. But either way, thanks, Boda. Really appreciate it. Yeah. But anyway, I guess to kind of close out for the first film, I will mention the movie was actually somewhat controversial when it came out in the UK. It almost ended up on the Notorious Video Nasties list, which were basically a list of movies that were deemed like that were like outright banned in the UK, but thankfully the judge managed to get a copy of the film, and after watching it, he threw the case out. So the movie got to be shown just as is in the UK, and I think it it was actually the most stolen VHS tape at that point.
Imagine having an entire like section of government made up to make sure that movies are like, not too bad for the general public consumption. People who have a choice, the illusion of choice. Am I right?
Yeah, like not especially because like a lot of the movies that were banned wouldn't get an uncut release until like the 2000s, and this is all the way back in like the early 80s, I think. So you would have to wait like 20 some odd years to see them in their entirety if you were in the UK. But
well, yeah, it's a good thing. Good thing that didn't happen.
Yeah. So yeah. So The Evil Dead comes out. It's a big hit. Stephen King calls it the most ferociously original horror film of the year, which did a lot for the marketing because they put that on all the posters. And Sam Raimi and company are on top of the world. So to transition into the next film, I will mention that prior to making Evil Dead 2, Raimi and company were actually making a movie called Crime Wave in 1985. It was like their first kind of studio film, but they were relative newcomers at the time, and they were basically screwed over by the producers. I don't remember the full story, but there were a lot of changes made behind the scenes and a lot of disagreements, and Bruce Campbell even is quoted as saying that it wasn't released, it escaped. And the movie was a big critical and commercial flop, so basically with no other options, they were like, well, fuck, what do we do? So they decided to make a sequel to their most popular film, and that's how we got Evil Dead 2. So what was the first time you saw Evil Dead 2, and what did you think?
It would have to be like maybe a week after seeing the first one, and so I like the second one. Out of the whole lot, the second one's my favorite one because it is one, the lighting is way better.
Yeah.
Two, the cabin they use in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But funny, the fun story about that is it's technically still the same mountain range, but it's completely different part of the mountain, and it's one of those things where it's really hard to tell the difference unless you look for certain things.
Yeah.
And I feel that the second one is more comedic. It's lighter in lighting. It's easier to see the special effects, and you definitely get a sense of a personal you get personally invested into the hero's journey with Ash and as he descends into madness and eventually gets over it.
Yeah. No, I certainly get that. And I know a lot of people, love Evil Dead 2, and don't get me wrong, I love it as well. But for me, the first one just has, a special place in my heart, and, not to discredit the work that went into Evil Dead 2, but I kind of respect the first one a little bit more, just that, these are a bunch of college dropouts who didn't have a whole lot of money going into a cabin in the middle of Tennessee to shoot this thing that they had no idea how it was going to turn out, and it turned out to be a smash hit. So in that sense, I kind of prefer the first one, but also because the first one's much more of a horror film than the second one, which like I said, I know it sounds like I'm bashing on it. I'm not. I love Evil Dead 2. But it is a little disconcerting that you go from more of a straight-up horror film to one that is still horror, but it's also a little bit more comedic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. The slapstick is there, the hand, the don't forget that one of the best things that came out of the second one was the continuous shot of the deadite spirit chasing him through the cabin and throwing him all the way down the driveway.
Yeah, that was a great sequence. And actually, I should mention the way they did those POV shots was they couldn't afford a Steadicam when they filmed the first movie, so they created what they called the shaky cam, which is basically they had they put the camera on a 2x4, and they had Sam Raimi and another guy hold both ends of the 2x4 and just run with it through the woods.
It went through the woods. It went through 2 car windows, a door, another door.
Yeah. Yeah, I will.
And then the door's back in the next scene.
Yeah, that's actually another reason why I love the original film is that it shows that you know, you don't need like a huge budget to make, a really good movie. Like it showed how much potential Sam Raimi had as a director and how creative he could be with the camera and the lighting and whatnot.
My biggest thing is I know that continuity doesn't account for a whole hell of a lot
Yeah.
in the thing. It's been a while since I've seen the second one, but there was no cream corn and corpses in the living room in the second one, and there really should have been.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, I guess I should get into that a little bit. So they originally, for the opening of Evil Dead 2, they actually wanted to use footage from the first film, but they couldn't due to rights issues because the first film was picked up by New Line Cinema, I believe, and then the second one was picked up by, I think it was Dino De Laurentiis, who's a pretty infamous movie producer, but for rights issues, they couldn't use the footage from the first movie, so they had to basically do kind of like a mini recap of the first film, just, without Shelley, Cheryl, or Scotty. It was just Ash and Linda.
Yeah, like it was like it was like they had to just revamp half the story, but also at the same time you could say no, they were there the entire time. If he's going through madness from being accosted by an interdimensional demon,
Yeah.
there's a good chance that he in his mind he could have like forgotten about them,
Yeah.
or he could have made them up the entire time.
Yeah, it could be that Ash is like an unreliable narrator.
Because later on we do learn that he is a bit of a liar to
Mhm.
get what he wants, but also at the same time he's a very human character,
Yeah,
which comes out a lot more like way later on in the like the franchise.
yeah. I also will say that as much as I love Bruce Campbell in Evil Dead 2, I think I'd have to look her name up, but the actress who plays, because to kind of get into a bit of the plot of Evil Dead 2, it picks up directly where the first film leaves off, where Ash is like still stuck at the cabin, basically being fucked with by the demons. Meanwhile, Annie Noby, who's the daughter of Raymond Noby, who found the Book of the Dead to begin with, she and her partner Ed go to the cabin with two yokels, Jake and Bobby Joe, and basically they end up stuck at the cabin with Ash. And the actress who plays Annie, I'd have to look her name up really quick. I think it's Sarah Berry. Like, she is probably the best actor in the movie, like after Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, she had a really good performance. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate they couldn't use her for any other future parts because, spoiler alert, she perishes
Yeah.
at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But like unceremoniously, like dies in this like one of the stupidest ways possible in the entirety of the franchise, in my opinion.
No.
But I'm not even like, if you're curious, go watch it. It's really stupid. It's stupid enough that I don't want to spoil it.
No, yeah, I get that. And oh yeah, another thing I did want to mention is so they do show like some flashbacks to Professor Nobody when he's reading the Necronomicon, and so it kind of goes into a bit more of the backstory with him and his family, and it shows his wife Henrietta, who we find out was actually possessed by these demons and locked in the fruit cellar, and she's reawakened by the book, and that's actually Sam Raimi's brother Ted Raimi in a fat suit.
Yeah, the scene where that is just funny because when they come across freaking Ash like squatting in the fucking like thing. He's crazy.
Yeah.
He's got a gun. He's missing a freaking hand for some reason. He's spouting off about something stupid. They don't know where the chick's dad is. And so they take his ass, they throw him in the fucking fruit cellar. They start listening to the audio tape. And it's like, I couldn't bring myself to dismember her corpse.
Yeah.
I buried her in the fruit cellar. They say that.
And then her head pops up, and then he just like screams like a girl. And she's like, someone's in my fruit cellar. Someone with a fresh soul. But what's funny is that Ted Raimi was like really really hot in the fat suit, like to the point to where like he will wear like little booties for the suit. It would actually get filled with sweat. Like there's actually a shot in the movie where if you look really closely, you can see like sweat coming out of one of the ear holes.
Oh yeah, and then not to mention the eye scene that follows.
Yeah, when there's a part where like Henrietta's head like comes out through the cellar door, and like Ash like stomps down on the door, and it makes one of her eyeballs pop out and land in the girl's mouth.
Yeah, it landed a bit and Billy Joe's
Bobby Joe.
Bobby Joe's mouth, and she becomes possessed by a deadite. See, the possession of the deadite, like deadites possessing bodies, it was never fully explained. I think it has everything to do with like madness creeping in.
Yeah.
It is as well defined as the rules are for this book. It's actually not ever explained how they operate. Especially later on in the franchise when they start like summoning certain key demons that have names that aren't just like regular deadites. If I had to assume anything, I would say that deadites actually just can't exist.
Yeah.
Or they're already in people. They get brought out by the veil like getting thinner when the book is like basically active after being read. Like there's a certain part that you have to do in order to like close the veil or to make it thicker. And that's the only way they can like dispel these things from popping up. Like later on, we figure out that them popping up is such a like modern day occurrence. You just throw them in a fucking pit.
Yeah. Well, I also just it is kind of a spoiler, but I also just found it funny how in Evil Dead 2, the way that they ultimately defeat the evil is they basically just send it back in time. You know, it's like, well, it's not our problem anymore.
Well, that's the thing is like the veil was like never closed, and that was like the whole entire point of it. In order to like the only way they could figure out how to do anything in it, because the rest of the book, the rest of that copy of the book was destroyed, so they don't actually know how to close the veil. And anyone who there's no one alive at that point in time that would know how to close the veil. They just have this time traveling freaking spell.
Yeah.
That's from like pages out of the freaking book.
Another thing I wanted to mention that I almost forgot about was for the character Bobby Joe, the part was originally going to be played by Holly Hunter. I don't know if anybody in here knows who Holly Hunter is, but I'd have to look her up really quick.
Is it Asterix?
No, Holly Hunter is a pretty famous actress. She was in the Piano third. Oh, okay. She was Elastigirl in The Incredibles.
Ah.
Yeah, but yeah, she was originally up for the part of Bobby Joe, but the producers apparently wanted someone quote unquote sexier. Well, another thing I should mention to kind of backtrack to the first movie, one of the people who worked on it as an editor was a then unknown Joel Cohen, I think. Yeah, it was one of the first jobs for the Coen brothers, and they actually like even though Holly Hunter didn't get the part, the Coen brothers actually cast her as Nick Cage's love interest in Raising Arizona.
Damn.
Yeah. Also, like, I gotta mention, I love Dan Hicks, who plays Jake in the movie. Like, he's just such a fun, like, asshole to watch get his comeuppance.
Yeah.
Like, when he grabs the pages of the book and he's like, bunch of mumbo-jumbo bullshit! And he throws it down the cellar. And then, like, when Annie's, like, hiding from Ash when he becomes possessed, she thinks he, like, comes to the door and she accidentally stabs Jake with the dagger.
Bunch of mumbo jumbo bullshit. It's like, it's very, very reminiscent. I don't understand it, therefore it is not important. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. One other funny thing I just remember with the movie is so one of the problems they ran into with the first film is that Star's comparing. Star said, "Poor film nerd must feel like Seth MacFarlane making references hardly anyone knows." Damn. I mean, I know I'm not funny, but I mean, I'm not that unfunny, am I?
Seth MacFarlane is the creator of Family Guy.
Yeah, and The Cleveland Show, and American Dad.
Yeah, he's not. He is the dude who most of his characters are self-inserts.
Yeah, that's fair, but we're getting a little off topic here.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back, so part of the problem with the first film was that they had to release the film unrated because if they try to get it a rating, it would get an X, which is like the kiss of death. So for the second film, they wanted it to get an R rating, and one of the ways they did that was with the blood, because like when it comes to the MPAA, red blood is like a big no-no. So for the second movie, they decided to do different colored blood. Like there's some like bright red blood, there's dark red blood, there's black blood, there's green blood, and I think there's a deleted scene where they even have like yellow blood. Like they do these all of these different colors of blood just to avoid getting an X rating.
It was definitely a product of the time. It's definitely worth the watch. Another fun tidbit that is like useless information. I do believe it is Poker Night at the Inventory 2. A Steam game that you can buy where you can play poker with various characters from other franchises. You can play poker against Ash and Brock Sampson.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, like they got like Evil Dead themed like poker sets and whatnot in the game.
Yeah. But anyway, I guess to kind of wrap things up, so Evil Dead 2 came out in 1987, just a few years after the first film, and it goes over really well. Like, let's see, on a budget of $3.5 million, it made almost $6 million, and it got rave reviews from critics, including Roger Ebert, who typically like hates horror films, but he gave it a really he gave it a rating of, I want to say, like 3.5 out of 4 stars. But yeah, the second movie went over really well, and I think Bruce Campbell has even said it's his favorite film of the trilogy.
I imagine so.
So anyway, then we transition into the third film of the franchise, which is 1993's Army of Darkness. I guess before I get into some of the history about the film, when did you first see Army of Darkness, and what did you think?
Once again, like maybe a week after seeing the second one, and I was not prepared for it. That was like one of the ones that had the box art for.
Yeah.
And it was such a steep or stark and steep contrast to the other two in like the way it was portrayed. Like if you be so kind as if you could find the poster art and show these people the poster art.
Yeah, sure. Let me actually let me just pull up my screen really quick here. Okay. Yeah, I should be able to see my screen. Okay, Army. Let's see. Army of Darkness poster. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I've got the post. Got it pulled up right here. You should be able to see it if it'll load. Sorry, my computer's running. There we go. Okay. Let me just open a new tab. Yeah, I don't know if you can see the poster, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like. Yeah, like this poster, like, yeah, it definitely sets a different tone than the first two movies.
And that goes into the whole entire aspect of like the hero's journey. At this point right here, when Ash is at his peak, he is no longer insane, or he has figured out that he's basically player one. He's player one. To the extent of the only thing that like the powers that be can think of to actually stop him is to have him fight himself literally.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I was gonna say it also like kind of shows a change in tone in that while the first two were more horror films, like the second one veered a bit more into comedy, but it was still horror. The third one is like all out comedy. Like it's barely even a horror film. It's Sarn says very Conan the Barbarian is. Yeah, it
You,
kind
you would you would you would think that, but it would be if Conan Barbarian was a smartass from like the modern era with a
yeah,
gun and a functioning chainsaw.
yeah, pretty much. Which I guess I'll get into that just real. I guess real quick, I'll mention how I first saw it. So I saw the movies in order. Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, and then Army of Darkness. I want to say, yeah, I want to say I saw Army of Darkness like shortly after I saw the second film, and yeah, like you were saying, I was kind of taken aback by just how funny the movie was and how it was a lot more slapsticky and more comedic. Like it just felt like a completely different movie that had like very little to do with the first two movies. I mean, I still
Yeah, Goodly. It was definitely more cartoon-esque in itself, but overall, I everybody enjoys the ride.
yeah, it is a fun ride, but yeah, if you're like a pure horror fan, and you're just wanting it to be more like the first two, you're definitely going to be disappointed. But I guess to kind of go into a little bit more history behind it. So after Evil Dead 2 came out, there were a lot of big opportunities that opened for Sam Raimi. He started getting work in Universal. He made a little movie in 1990, I believe, called Darkman, which is basically his take on like a darker superhero. Like he wanted, like I think he had wanted to do like a Batman movie or a movie based on the Shadow, but when he couldn't get the rights to either, he just created Darkman. And then after
Opposite of the Lightbringer.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, after he made Darkman, he was contracted by Universal to make what became the third Evil Dead movie, which I think he wanted to call it like Evil Dead 3 or have it be tied in more with Evil Dead 3, but the studio didn't want the tie-ins. I guess they didn't want people to know that it was a sequel to, the first two Evil Dead movies, and because I think the movie, it did well, but it wasn't as big of a hit as the first two, and I think a large part of that is because like nobody knew that it was a sequel.
Well, that's the thing is not only that, but you're talking about their first two movies hitting out of the park in respect is like it's all in a closed-in area in a cabin, and then you go from that to being in the greater desert plains somehow, freaking of like freaking Europe. I don't know how they're desert plains all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Or how they got from one place to the other, but it's like they're in a castle, and I don't know, can't place where it is. All I know is there's a bunch of English-speaking knights
Yeah.
everywhere in this castle. There's an old rickety graveyard, like a day's journey away from where they are, and they're fighting the literal forces of darkness, and this is where that pit comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, apparently, from what I was reading, the whole like medieval Dead, I guess you could call it, that was actually what Sam Raimi originally wanted to do for Evil Dead 2, but he couldn't afford to do that with the kind of budget he had, so he basically went back to the cabin for the second film. But then for the third film, he got to do the idea he had wanted to do, and I think there's even a little like scene at the end of Evil Dead 2 that kind of hints at what he wanted to do all along, which is, the Evil Dead, but in medieval times.
yeah, shit. It definitely works, but they crank the wackiness up to 11.
Yeah.
Like somehow within the span of maybe a day or so, he trains this entire like castle in the art of like auto mechanics.
Yeah.
And somehow makes an auto male hand that's fully like articulated.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing though, is that I mean then again, like the second film you could argue is also very cartoony in a way, but like I don't know, it's still like it was cartoony in like a darker sort of way. Like it fit the rest of the tone. Whereas like with Army of Darkness, it just feels like, like logic and reason has just gone right out the window, and it just, all bets are off.
It's if you want something it's something easy to watch, something easy to watch, have a good laugh, and maybe change your entire identity, become more like Ash, you should probably just watch this. You can probably get away with just watching this one if horror is not your thing.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, there are some very scary thriller-esque parts, but at the same time, and this is brought up in the movie itself, the degree of the enemy you fight matters little when your most primary weapon is a functioning shotgun and a chainsaw.
Yeah, which, by the way, I wanted to touch on that really quick. In the poster, it shows Ash with like the chainsaw for a hand, but he only has it for a hand for like the first like 10-15 minutes of the movie. Then after he gets out of the pit, he does still have the chainsaw, but he only uses it once. Like after that, he gets the robot hand and he just uses the shotgun.
It makes more sense because since he's able to somehow get these people to master gunpowder in an afternoon, he's able to have like at least some idea to make like reload his shells. And in this part, he's using a break action shotgun.
Yeah.
So he has like he has 2 shots and he's got to reload. So you need a hand free to do that better than what he has been doing it in.
Yeah. I will say also that I do kind of love how the movie kind of goes into like Ray Harryhausen territory with like, because there's like a lot of stop motion skeletons and like the whole like big battle sequence, which like the climax of the movie, it definitely had some like Jason the Argonauts type vibes to it, especially with like all the sword play and whatnot.
Oh hell yeah.
But yeah, no, like you were saying before, I mean, I enjoy Army of Darkness, warts and all, but like it's definitely a more accessible film. Like it's one of those sequels where it's like you kind of don't need to see the other ones to be caught up, but if you do see the other ones and then see this, it's going to be like, what the hell is this? Like, this doesn't even feel like a sequel to those two.
It's very much like jumping in at any part of like the last set, like last few JoJo parts. Like they're all enclosed. You don't have to watch the previous ones. The context helps, but not by much.
Yeah. But yeah, so Army of Darkness came out in 1992, I believe. And I'm just really quickly just looking over some stuff about it. But yeah, the movie came out in 1992, and I think it did reasonably. Yeah, it did pretty well. It had a budget of $11 million, and it made $21.5 million. But it did get good reviews, but they weren't quite as positive as they were for the first two. Yeah, Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars, and he said, "The movie isn't as funny or entertaining as Evil Dead 2. However, maybe because the comic approach seems recycled." Which, yeah, I can't say he's like wrong about that. I mean, I do find the movie funny, but it does also kind of feel recycled in a way, or just like out of place.
I'm a contrarian when it comes to things right here. Like when it comes to some critics, no offense, film.
Yeah, no, of course.
If it's like recycled stuff, but it's good, I think there's merit in that. Like you don't fix what's not broken.
Yeah, no, exactly.
More or less. If you manage to make a movie that's entertaining despite you're like, oh, this isn't what I expected. It's like this creation of this film is definitely the subversion of expectations that so many directors nowadays wish they could freaking do. But so far, it's just like, I'm going to subvert their expectations. I'm going to make a terrible fucking movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get that. So, I guess before we move on, so this movie has 2 different endings. There's the theatrical ending and the director's cut ending.
I slept too long.
Yeah. I guess to explain it, so in the director's, so both endings kind of start off the same, where at the end of the movie, spoiler, Ash is given a potion that basically will will put him to sleep, and then he'll awaken in his own time. But in the theatrical ending, he ends up back in his own time. He's back at the store that he worked at, and he saves this girl from one of the Deadites, and it goes to into the speech where he ends off by saying, "Hail to the king, baby." But in the original ending, it plays the same. He's given the potion, but he's told to take 6 drops of it exactly, and he's put into a cave to like sleep in, and he takes the drops like 1, 2, 3, 4, but then like he gets distracted and he actually takes an extra drop, so he takes 7, and then he falls asleep. Time passes, like the car dies, he grows like a long beard, and he finally climbs out of the cave. He walks outside, and it's a post-apocalyptic world, and he screams out, "I slept too long!"
Yeah, the funny part and the reason why they came back in time is that was like I said earlier, like way in the beginning, like way back in the stream a little bit. The way to actually close the veil was to utter like some magical words. Like I have a hard time remembering off the top of my head. I'm kinda tired.
Klaatu Varada Nikto.
Yeah, and he couldn't. Even Ash couldn't remember all of them.
Yeah.
So he misspoke the words.
Yeah.
And when he did, it pretty much made the veil. The veil was like going to remain open for an indeterminate amount of time. And since all the books had like scattered around to a certain degree, like the 2 of them scattered, but he had one of them. Mm-hmm. At the very end, he had one of them. He went to sleep with one of them. Yeah. And so that means the book he had was one of the 3, and probably the one that one that he didn't pick up, and the one that flew away. One of those ended up being the ones that he had they destroyed in the cabin.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, I was gonna. Sorry.
He would need another chance to actually try to close the veil again at some point, but apparently the Deadites are on like a freaking weird ass time crunch, and it takes like 20 years for them to do shit.
Yeah, exactly. So I was gonna ask, which of the 2 endings do you prefer, the theatrical or the original ending?
I think both of them are good in their own respects. Personally, I prefer the theatrical ending because it left the door open for so much more.
Sure.
Then so we can have what we have today with like everything going on.
Yeah.
But with an ending that's just like that's just like, you know, this is how it is. Bad ending. Like you get your bad ending, and I'm like there's nowhere to go with that.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I think there is room to go from there. You know, like you've got Ash in a post-apocalyptic world, and there's a lot you could do with that, I think.
RoboCop crossover.
Yeah, exactly. I guess if I were to pick an ending, like, part of me kind of likes the original ending better, because in all the previous films, they each had like a downer ending. You know, the first film is like, you know, Ash survived, but all of his friends are dead, and then he gets attacked by the spirits. The second film, he ends up, you know, in 1300 AD. So, you know, logically, it would make sense that that for the next film, the ending would also be a downer. But
it is the film was separate there. It is a downer. You're talking about a man who traveled time, fought demons, became a hero in the eyes of a people he'll never see ever again, just to go work in fucking retail.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? No downer. No. The downer.
Well, I mean, working in retail is still better than, you know, being trapped in a post-apocalyptic future where everyone you know is dead.
I beg to fucking differ.
All right, well,
he went to a world that had all of his friends still dead in it, and he's got to work retail.
Yeah. Okay. I guess you make a good point there. But anyway, yeah. So Army of Darkness comes out, does reasonably well, but then after that, there were no more Evil Dead movies. Bruce Campbell went on to go from being an actor to what I would call a living legend. Sam Raimi went on to direct the original Spider-Man trilogy, which we could do a whole other stream on.
Which had each one of them had a cameo from not only Stan Lee but Bruce Ash Campbell as varying roles, being the announcer at the fights.
Yeah,
being the usher in the second one, and the third one I can't remember.
In the third one, he's like a snooty waiter. But one thing that's kind of funny about his cameo in the first movie is he's the one who actually gives him the name Spider-Man, because he's like, "What's your name, son?" He's like, "I'm the Amazing Spider," and he's like, "Oh, that name sucks." And then he's like, "The Amazing Spider-Man," and he's like, "It's the Human Spider," and then everybody starts chanting, "Spider-Man, Spider-Man," so he sticks with it. And according to Bruce Campbell, the cameo he has in the second film, where he's the theater usher, they were kind of toying with the idea that maybe that could actually be Mephisto in a future movie.
Freaking Ash is Mephisto.
Or no, wait, not
Ash.
No, wait, it was I think I got that wrong. I think it was actually Mysterio. That was it.
Oh, Mysterio. Well, that ship has definitely sailed, but
yeah.
But Ash as Mephisto. Could you imagine Ash as like the embodiment of evil?
Yeah.
In the new cinematic universe, he is the father, the creator. He is the master of the Ghost Rider.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, so even though there weren't really definite plans to make a fourth film, there were talks of it around the 2000s. Like Bruce Campbell even said he'd be up for doing another one, but then instead of a continuation of the Evil Dead trilogy, we got let me pull it up really quick. In 2013, we got a Evil Dead remake instead, which I'll be honest, when I first heard they were doing a remake, I, like a typical fanboy, I was like crying out, like, as Spoonie would say, betrayal, because the original is like my favorite horror film of all time, and just the very thought of them doing a remake just seemed like sacrilegious to me. I haven't seen it since I saw it like way back in 2013, so that's a good decade ago. Spaz, I know you mentioned you haven't seen the remake yet.
I'm probably gonna watch it this vacation. I recently got my hands on the last 3 Spider-Man movies I require to see all of them, and we've been watching them in a weird order. We're finishing the last Garfield Spider-Man some point in time tomorrow.
All right.
Finishing the last Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and then we're gonna watch No Way Home. We're watching in a weird order.
I got you. But yeah, I haven't seen the remakes that I saw in the theater back in 2013, and from what I remember of it, obviously it doesn't hold a candle to the original trilogy, but with a lot of modern remakes especially, the big problem I always have with them is that there's no love put into them. It just feels like a quick cash grab, just making some money off of a recognizable name. But in the case of this remake, I give them credit because it felt like the people who made it actually were fans of the original and wanted to pay their respects to it, especially because for the most part the effects in it were done practically. There were a few CG shots, but it was all mostly practical effects, which especially in this day and age is a freaking rarity.
I mean, I understand how some remakes nowadays could be a really quick cash grab, but I feel like horror remakes as of late that are actually either trying to do something a little bit different, or at least trying to not just copy the same thing. People don't like the new Hellraisers for certain reasons, and I can understand that, but did you I said earlier, don't fix what's not broken, but at the same time, would you like them to try to do something at least halfway different, or would you like this, or like them to go the same path that the franchise actually did and like lose themselves in the sauce?
Yeah, no, no, I get what you mean. Like I'm of the school of thought that like you really shouldn't remake anything. Like, I mean, like, well, like, sorry, I know I keep stumbling over my words, but like, my train of thought is that if it worked the first time, why do it again? But I do also think like there are some movies that maybe had a good idea, but it wasn't like fleshed out enough the first time around. So maybe there's like you could improve upon it, or even like do kind of a modern spin on it. Like even though it's not technically a remake, I think John Carpenter's The Thing is a great example. Like it takes the same basic story of The Thing from Another World from the 1950s, and but like does its own thing with it. And by that I mean they actually adapt the book, whereas in the original film they took some of the broad strokes but didn't like they took out the element of the alien like shape shifting and like taking on the appearance of anything it comes into contact with. Like they took all that out. But I think that's a good example of like a remake taking the basic idea of the original but doing something different with it, and I think that's the way to do it.
Oh shit, we got Silent Wyvern in the
Yeah, I see that. He said, and I quote, "I got my bussy bopped and ready for this badness. Film nerd, how bussin' is your bussy?" I mean, you know what? You do you, man.
It's completely and totally wrecked. I checked earlier.
I'm sure you can.
I have eyes everywhere where there are shadows. You can't hide anything from me. You can't put a light bright in your pants.
Oh lord. But yeah, I guess going back to the remake of The Evil Dead, it does follow the same basic structure as the original, but there are some minor differences. For one, all the characters have different names, but they basically play out the same characters from the original, but like instead of Cheryl, it's Mia. And I remember another big thing was that like they had more of a reason for going to the cabin. The reason being is that the Cheryl stand-in was like a former drug addict, and they were trying to get her to quit cold turkey. So they thought bringing her to this remote cabin would help her out.
I definitely have to get get access to this and watch it. Bodacious says it's best to leave things as a flash in the pan most of the time. I would agree to a certain extent,
yeah.
But they're like there is a big difference between like okay, so if we look at things from perspective of how things have been for the past decade, when it comes to sequels and remakes, there is a line to be drawn between like having a project you love the property of, and intent to do the right thing. Like for instance, the most recent iteration of It, that the people have feelings about that. I think they did probably the best they could do without making everything horrible.
Yeah,
and, I would say they have done no damage. That they've done the best they could. They did no damage in my opinion. It's a decent watch. It's the same, but it's different enough to where it stands out on its own merit, I believe.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And then you have the sequels we have with Star Wars.
Yeah.
To where the whole entire idea of the source material is a secondhand thought, and you end up with 3 movies that's a dick measuring contest between 2 directors.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong on that, but I mean that's a whole other stream we could do. Another thing I do remember from the remake is they do kind of a twist on the whole, like, even though it's not Cheryl, I'm just gonna call her Cheryl. They do kind of a twist on the Cheryl thing where she at first becomes possessed, but then she becomes unpossessed, and the guy that's basically the Ash stand-in, he actually is one of the people who gets killed, and in the end she's the one who like defeats the evil demons or whatever.
And that goes into the premise I was talking about earlier with the idea of how the Deadites are already inside everybody.
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like the veil becoming thinner in like certain places, and if you can if your spirit is strong enough, you can overcome it.
Yeah. Let's see. I should also mention that the director of the movie was Fede Alvarez, and I believe this might have, yeah, this was his first movie, and then after that he directed Don't Breathe, which, funny enough, the reason why he made Don't Breathe was because he wanted to prove to people that he could be more than just, hey, the guy who remade Evil Dead.
Um, yeah. Shit. Didn't that get a sequel? And they made the guy like a sympathetic villain.
Yeah, they did make a Don't Breathe sequel, and I never saw it because just because, I don't know, like, I love Stephen Lang, but the idea of his character from the first movie now being like the hero is just really weird to me.
There is no form or fashion to where you can justify making the dude a hero when he had enough justification to have a jar laying around of a very, my fucking god.
Yeah.
How I have several questions.
Yeah.
How does a blind guy build this? How does he get it all in the jar?
Yeah.
How does he know it's still good?
Yeah, I know. I will admit, when I saw it in the theater, that was one of those moments where, when they revealed that, I was, shocked, but then I was also like, wait, what? Like, it just kind of came out of freaking nowhere.
I'm so glad I don't go to movies that often.
Yeah.
And I didn't bother going to see that in theaters. I probably would have started like laughing at the most inappropriate times. People say, "What's wrong with you?" And it's like, "How the fuck does a blind man get all of that in a jar? That wasn't in one sitting."
Yeah, exactly. But I guess going back to the Evil Dead remake really quick, I remember there was one thing my friends at the time were like really freaking out about, and it was a Bruce Campbell cameo. And I was like, wait, what are you talking about? And I found out that apparently there's a post-credits stinger in the movie where Bruce Campbell like walks on screen. It's in complete darkness, so you can see like his outline, but you don't see him. He literally just says groovy. Then he turns to the camera and it just cuts to black. And I saw the clip of it online, and I'm like, really? That's what you all got excited about, was just 5 seconds of Bruce Campbell in the dark room?
That sounds like the best movie ever made. Fuck Cocaine Bear. I want 5 seconds of Bruce Campbell silhouette and the word groovy written on it.
Yeah.
That's a working title. We'll get around to it. Bruce Campbell will probably do it for a pack of gum nowadays.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, don't talk shit about Cocaine Bear, because Silent Wyvern's in the chat and he's busting over Cocaine Bear.
But that's fine. He can do that. It's probably going to be the best film we're going to get all year. Next to well, I have my concerns about the next Evil Dead Rise, but I feel like I think it'll do just fine. And it'll scratch that itch people have been needing for a while when it comes to like something it's going to make you feel uncomfortable. And I think it's going to scratch that itch.
Yeah. And I guess with that, we can probably just, well, I guess real quick, I'll mention some more stuff about the remake. So the movie actually did do fairly well when it came out. It made $97.5 million on a $17 million budget. It got pretty favorable reviews. It won a couple of awards. And I think there were even talks of a sequel around like 2019 or so. But yeah, that never happened. So we just got the standalone remake. But then there was a fourth film that was greenlit, and that's how we got to this year's Evil Dead Rise, which I don't know if it's supposed to be is it supposed to be a sequel to the original 3, or is it supposed to be like its own thing? Because that's what I'm still like confused about.
Well, Sam Raimi's not directing it, is he?
No, it's being directed by some guy named Lee Cronin. Apparently, because I'm looking over his filmography, he mostly did a bunch of short films, and the only other like feature film he has to his name is something called The Hole in the Ground, which I've never heard of.
So with that, I don't. I think we do a little more digging, we'll be able to find the answer. I don't believe it is a that it is a direct sequel. I think it's its own standalone.
Yep.
Because I haven't seen the remake. What happened to the Necronomicon in the remake?
It's been years since I've seen it, so I honestly don't remember. I mean, I want to say it got destroyed, but again, I can't remember. But I was gonna get into my thoughts about Evil Dead Rise because I did watch the trailer for it not so long ago, and I'll be honest, I don't see how it's an Evil Dead movie. Like, I watched the trailer and I'm like, other than the title, this really doesn't feel like an Evil Dead movie. It feels like any other like possession movie, but they just have the title Evil Dead attached to it. Like, I don't know, there's just something about it to where, like, to me anyway, it didn't feel like Evil Dead.
That's the thing. It's like it's probably its own standalone thing, just with the working title. Like similar to how you have like Cloverfield. It's like the Cloverfield movies are loosely associated if you look hard enough and squint hard enough.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if the Necronomicon doesn't play into this movie, and there's no way of knowing if it's a direct sequel to the original 3 or if it's a sequel to the remake or anything of that nature. Because if you look at I don't know how faithful to the source material the remake is, like, you know, the 3 original Necronomicons and things of that nature. But this like the whole entire concept I was saying about the veil, this definitely could be it. The Deadite and the Deadite possession could be a perfect meld within the mother character. And that's what like leads everything to it, because the way possession movies are going nowadays is definitely becoming more mainstream to see creative demons in the situation, and the Deadite idea probably is where this is going, because most possession movies you have nowadays, the possessed aren't directly violent.
Yeah.
Like Deadite, like people who are possessed by Deadites are.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, they do the thing where they slowly creep you into madness by doing like little tricks and this and a fourth. Oh, it was a doll over here situation. But a Deadite will literally drive you insane by accosting you directly.
Yeah. I do know that for this movie, apparently Bruce Campbell has like since retired from playing Ash, so he won't. So I don't think he'll be returning for this one. So I guess that kind of leads more to my thing about whether this is supposed to be like a sequel to the original trilogy, or if it's its own thing, or if it's like connected to the remake. Like, I don't know. Like I said, from the trailer, at least to me anyway, it didn't really feel like Evil Dead. But then again, sometimes, you know, there are a lot of great movies out there that have terrible trailers, so it could just be a case of like the trailer doesn't fully represent the movie.
I think it's gonna do just fine. All of our questions will be answered by the end of the credits. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Either that, or it'll be completely fucking wrong.
Yeah.
And we could have more questions that go in there, and I'm gonna need to wait until another YouTuber writes an entire like five hour like video essay breaking down each point.
Yeah, exactly. I guess the last thing I'll touch on is the TV show Ash vs. Evil Dead, which Spaz, how much of the show have you watched?
Okay, so last time we talked about it, I tried to rewatch it, and I've gotten to the part where it's revealed that the mom's been dead the entire time and is possessed by a Deadite.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized that I was trying to watch it. I'm sitting on the couch, and I realized I'm not the only one watching it. My son's watching it, and I'm like, sir, watching like blood and gore through everywhere. I'm like, he imitates the spear action from watching us play Ark. I don't think I need him watching this. And like, is your head gonna explode, Dad? I'm like, maybe one day, but not like this.
No, I get that. But no, yeah, when I first heard about the show, I was really excited, but I couldn't watch it when it first came out because they didn't have stars at the time. but now like all 3 seasons should be on Netflix, so I watch them over a course of like a couple months. Usually whenever I get on the treadmill, I like to watch some show on my iPad. So there's a period where I was watching that while I was on the treadmill, and I will admit at first I was a little put off by like some of the CGI and how it kind of leaned a bit more into comedy. But as the show progressed, I really started getting into it. I loved, Bruce Campbell's great in it. I loved his two sidekicks, whose names escape me off at the moment.
Pedro.
Oh yeah, Pedro and the girl whose name I can't remember, but yeah, they were both great in it. I thought what's her name? The chick who played Xena Warrior Lucy Lawless. I thought Lucy Lawless was awesome in the show. I absolutely adored her in it. And I also thought it was funny how in the first episode they actually acknowledged like Cheryl, Scotty, and Shelly, which they hadn't done in any of the other movies.
Yeah,
But,
I can see that.
But I remember there was another. Well, what's funny is I think kind of like how they couldn't use footage for the first film in Evil Dead 2, they had kind of a rights issue thing with the show where like for the first season, maybe the first 2 seasons, I think they couldn't reference Army of Darkness because of rights issues, because the show is produced by Stars, which is owned by like Lionsgate or whatever, and Army of Darkness is owned by Universal. So because of that, they couldn't reference Army of Darkness. But then I think by the 3rd season, they got the rights issues sorted out, and they mentioned the events of Army of Darkness.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know it's crazy how rights issues work.
Anyway, I understand why it is. I just don't approve. I think for when it comes to properties being connected to each other, there shouldn't be things of that nature that stop you from referencing another work of art. Like, especially since there's like so many narrative ways you can get around it.
Yeah.
Just like simply saying, like, I heard one time, insert thing here. I mean, like, other franchises do it all the time. Like for like, video games, like the Splinter Cell, like references other stealth-based games, including like Metal Gear, like in it as they like, as they go. So it's just I'm so confused sometimes with all this crap.
Yeah, I know. It is just really weird how it all goes. But yeah, I guess to kind of just wrap things up, what are your overall thoughts on Evil Dead as a franchise? Do you think it works as a franchise, or do you think it should have stopped at a certain point? What are your overall thoughts on Evil Dead as a whole?
I think that depending on how this movie goes, we're probably gonna see a whole lot more of it. The Ash vs. Evil Dead has garnered enough respect that not only did it get its own adaptation into Dead by Daylight, it also got its own standalone game.
Yeah.
And Ash is in Fortnite.
Oh, a fucking course he is.
They gave him an emote where he's stomping on the door.
Okay, I mean, I'll be honest, I've played Fortnite before. It's not a very good game, but like, I don't know, that kind of makes me want to play it just a little, just for the novelty of being able to play as Ash. But again, it's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to subject myself to that again.
You can play Ash, and you can do the Kamehameha, and you can take out Rick Sanchez.
Yeah, thanks Epic Games.
I don't know why things have gotten the way that they are, and frankly, I wish it would stop. I know it's not going to stop. It's going to get worse before it gets any better.
Yeah.
It's going to take an act of God and capitalism to destroy the monster that is Fortnite. Unfortunately, it's all those two things are on its side because it has the power of anime.
Yeah,
and capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. I guess my overall thoughts on the Evil Dead as a whole, like I said before, the original film to this day is still my all-time favorite horror film. I think as a franchise, it definitely has its ups and downs. Like, Evil Dead 2 is a fantastic sequel. Army of Darkness is enjoyable, but it's definitely not in the same league as the first two. The remake was decent. The show I thought was a lot of fun, and I'm curious to see how they do with the new movie. But I'm also just really skeptical. But regardless of how the new movie turns out, I think the franchise will continue to endure, just because like it always just seems so funny to me that a movie made by a bunch of college dropouts who didn't really know what they were doing ended up becoming not a massive franchise, but definitely like a cult film franchise. Like, if nothing else, that in itself is like inspirational.
That tends to happen when you have somebody who's willing to take the plunge and
Yeah.
go straight into it to try to give something out to someone. Silent Wyvern says like, what are your thoughts about the Little Nicky as a tie-in for Evil Dead?
Oh God. I don't know. I mean, maybe like they could team up and like Nikki could like, I don't know, like whenever Ash kills somebody who's a Deadeye, Nikki could like try to take the demons and like get them into the flask or something. I don't know.
The Deadites aren't from hell, Ash. They're from another plane of existence.
Yeah. I gotta be honest, it's been years since I've seen Little Nicky, and I barely remember anything about that. The only things I remember were like Harvey Keitel as the devil, and Quentin Tarantino as like a cross-eyed preacher, and I think Reese Witherspoon was like an angel that was like Nicky's
Ozzy
mother.
Osbourne's in it. He's an agent for good. He bites the head off the brother and spits into the flask.
And I think it was like one of Rodney Dangerfield's last movies.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway,
it was a good movie.
Yeah, I guess I need to revisit it sometime. But
you chew it up and you let it slide down your throat.
yeah. All right, so I guess just to kind of wrap things up, Spaz, is there anything you want to plug or want to promote?
I got a few changes coming down the way. I'm not 100% on it just yet, but I may be starting a secondary channel to section off some of the content for like more personal projects that's not directly associated with the interwebbers, but we'll see what happens with that.
All right.
There is something in the works so far as trying to get an official server together for the interwebbers, but I'm not entirely sure how far that's going to be another project for me for this upcoming week. We'll see where that goes with that, and there's just more of the same and some new stuff coming the fast as I can turn.
All right, sounds good. And I guess I'll just go ahead and do my shilling shit. So of course, oh, didn't need to see that. Okay, so of course we've got the website here, film-nerd.com, which is going on its 5th year in existence. Holy shit. So yeah, I've done like hundreds upon hundreds of movie reviews. I reviewed like all kinds of stuff from like classic films to cult cinema to new releases, and funny enough, actually the first 3 movies I reviewed on here was the original Evil Dead trilogy. But the most recent review I've got is for the 1987 movie Hideous, as part of my Full Moon Fridays series, where every Friday I look at the films of one Charles Band from Full Moon Features and Empire Pictures, and then prior to that I did the movie Honky Holocaust as part of another series I do called Trauma Tuesdays, where I look at the films of one Mr. Lloyd Kaufman of Trauma. He didn't direct Honky Holocaust, he distributed it, but I reviewed like Toxic Avenger, Class of Nukem High, Cannibal the Musical, Terror Firmer, all that good stuff. And then prior to that, I finally got back to my Godzilla retrospective, which I do plan on being more active with because there have been a lot of like gaps in between them. But the most recent one I've done is on Godzilla vs. Megalon, which is about what you would expect from like this era of like Godzilla movies, where it's like very goofy and like geared towards kids and just not that great. But I don't know. I'm excited for the next, because the next one I'm doing is Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla, and I've heard that one's actually an improvement, so I'm excited for that. And then after that, and then prior to that, we've got Zombie-thon, which is a compilation tape that Charles Band made that basically is like a compilation of clips from like different zombie movies that he owned the rights to. It's kind of fun, like as like background noise, but it's, I don't know, it's not that great either. And then of course we got the Bill Murray classic Groundhog Day, which I reviewed on Groundhog Day. I don't think there's anything I can say that hasn't already been said. And then of course I've got my review for Megan, or Mithrigan, which I don't know. I actually thought it wasn't that bad. I mean, it's not an amazing movie, but I thought it was decent. But yeah, those are just a couple of the reviews I've got. I've got plenty more, and I've also got a merch store, and holy shit, I've got some new items. So I've got a Friday Nights of Film Nerd sticker and a t-shirt. I've also got some new stickers of the stills that Satanic Kazoo from the Echo server made. Kazoo, if you're watching this, thank you so much again for the stills. I really love them. And I also have a new, bless you, a new merch item. You're fine.
I didn't know that would pick up. Shit.
You're fine. But I actually created a new shirt design. Kind of one I've been wanting to do for a while, called the Film Nerds Emotions, where it's basically like one of those shirts where like they've got the little squares with the character, and it's like their different emotions. So like I've got one here that's like neutral, agitated, confused, excited, and scared. Comes with a bunch of different colors. I've got it as like different kinds of t-shirts, sweatshirts, tank tops, whatever. Definitely gonna be some more coming down soon. Just kind of have to think of some like ideas for new like merch designs. Other than that, I've got of course the Patreon, which you can go to and support if you like. I've got a couple of rewards set up. I'm also on all the socials: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I have a Discord server, and yeah, that's all. I got all that good stuff. So I guess other than that, Spaz, is there anything else you'd like to say before we close out?
There's a good chance for watching this like any point in time anywhere that also film is already in a server you're in.
Yeah,
like, even if you're clicking on this for the first time and you have no idea who we are, there's a chance that he's already in the server you're in and you don't realize it yet.
Yeah, I tend to get around quite a bit. But no, yeah, I guess with that said, Spaz, thank you so much for coming on. Kind of a last minute thing, but it was great having you on again.
I mean, I always enjoy it.
Yeah, and if you ever want to come back on in the future, my door's always open. You're more than welcome to come on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, not a problem. And thanks everybody who came in to listen to the two of us babble on about, some old horror movies and whatever else just came to mind. But yeah, so I guess in closing, as always, I've got more reviews and more videos coming down the way. So until then, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Let me just get the final song pulled up, and take care.
Goodbye.